Coming in at number 5, we've got Saturn. Pacific Rim is just such a wicked kaiju movie, eh? I mean, technically I don't know many people who would classify it as horror, but the smattering of enormous entities is enough to get any monster fan excited. Throughout the flick, it manages to one-up each monster with a bigger, badder beastie. Even the first one could be the main event in a lesser movie, but Guillermo del Toro does not let up. After fighting their way through all the categories of kaiju, the folks from the Jaeger Foundation have one final challenge, the first ever Category 5. Saturn. This thing is wicked. Over 180 meters tall and weighing in at nearly 7,000 tons, it is a force to be reckoned with. It blows all the other kaiju out of the water, which is kind of funny when you think about it because of that nuclear payload that gets detonated moments after it shows up. You know, because all the water is blown away for a moment. Okay, focus. Saturn isn't just huge, it's dangerous. It has 3 insane tails that can pierce armor and whip around at Mach speed. It has a freaky hammerhead that can be used to slam people to smithereens, and it's so toxic and nuclear that its insides are glowing blue. Wow. And the crowning jewel of all sorts of kaiju fits in well here too. It's pretty much immune to any and all attacks. Like, humanity had to develop Jaegers in order to even have a chance against these beasts, and as the first Category 5 to make it through the breach, Saturn is extremely resilient. It takes a long fight, a nuclear explosion, and a nuclear turbine blast point blank to the chest to take it down. That is one heck of a movie monster. Coming in at number 4, we've got sandworms. We've talked about graboids and ass blasters a few times in this channel, but I can't recall any time where I discussed Dune. That ends today with an acknowledgement of one of the most iconic monsters of all time. Oh man, this might not be horror proper either. It's more sci-fi, but oh well. Sandworms are absolutely bonkers. An average specimen can grow to be over 450 meters long, which is half a kilometer. And those are just the observed ones. It's thought that some worms that live in the southern pole areas can grow up to 1,000 meters, although it's never been confirmed. Still, the fact that worms of that size is even possible is nuts, and that is just the length. Sure, it's crazy that they're that long, but their maws are incomprehensibly large too. Some of the gaping mouth holes can be 120 or even 240 meters across. They could swallow entire buildings, no chewing required. Just absolutely enormous, these ones. They're so big, people on the planet Arrakis use them as their distance measuring units. How long will it take to get there? About 5 sandworms. The way their bodies work is pretty nuts too. See, their insides resemble something like a furnace and generate heat and flames. Imagine being a living being who heats up to the point of producing fire. Life is pain, I suppose. Although their tough skin and scales are up to the challenge. These outer pieces of armor are so tough, they're basically impenetrable. Although, if you know what you're doing, the scales can be used to ride the worms, which is pretty cool. Coming in at number 3, we've got Kroll. All right, we're 3 for 3 here, not exactly hitting the horror nail on the head, but giant monsters are scary all on their own. Whether or not they're featured in true horror movies doesn't matter. Now that I've done my mental gymnastics, let's talk about this gargantuan Doctor Who beast. Ages ago, giant squid were brought to Delta 3, a moon orbiting Delta Magna. Usually it's a bad idea to introduce brand new species to an unprepared ecosystem, and this proves to be true once again when Kroll eats a swampy priest along with a holy relic. After this unfortunate meal, Kroll begins to mutate in unexpected ways. The biggest change of all was definitely his size. Kroll was suddenly a mile wide and hundreds of meters tall. He promptly became the god of Delta 3, living under the mud, munching on whatever he get his tentacles around. The swampies that inhabited the moon began to worship Kroll and saw him as a religious deity. Now they even call the times he surfaces manifestations. I mean, it makes sense. If you were a primitive species of green people living on a moon and a mile-wide squid kept showing up, you'd probably think it was a higher power too. A mile wide. They also rely on the beast to kill their enemies, which he is very capable of doing. Well, until the good doctor rolls up. But hey, not even the biggest of big monsters can stand up to a Time Lord. Coming in at number 2, we've got King Ghidorah. Oh, baby. See, I could have populated this entire list with entries from the Godzilla verse, but then it would just become a Godzilla list. I guess Godzilla Earth could have made the cut too, which would be fun, but it's just not on the agenda today. So I went through all of the iconic beasts and monsters that have at some point fought or teamed up or existed at the same time as Godzilla and tried to find the biggest one. Godzilla itself was up for consideration, but if you've ever seen these two square off, you'll know who the larger lad is. Sporting 3 heads and a wingspan that can block out the sun, King Ghidorah is a massive monster. It makes plenty of appearances across all sorts of movies, but we'll focus on his appearance in Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, which, you know, Come on. Well, this Hydra-like being stands at 150 meters tall and has a wingspan of 175. If you want big, you've got it. And those wings better be big too, as he weighs over 70,000 tons. It's a miracle it can get off the ground at all. But once it's up there, it can reach Mach 3. Many Godzilla monsters end up teaming up with the titular icon from time to time, but never King Ghidorah. The two are diametrically opposed, arch rivals, never to see eye to eye on anything, and I can respect that long-standing beef. Between these two, it's on sight. He's a force of pure evil, meant to destroy anything and everything it can. There's no good lurking within, no greater purpose beyond destruction, and he's really good at destruction. Ghidorah can fire gravity beams and destroy city blocks in an instant. He can generate lightning with his wings. He can suck the life force out of anyone foolish to get close. So size isn't the only terrifying thing about this monster. He's got an RPG protagonist's toolbox worth of powers too. And coming in at number 1, we've got Clover. The main monster from Cloverfield. Clover is pretty big, right? Can rampage through New York, toss the Statue of Liberty, and generally cause a lot of trouble. But get this, the towering entity that peers down at the camera in the film's penultimate scene isn't even fully grown. It's just a baby. No wonder it was so cranky. But for real, Clover can get way, way bigger. In the Cloverfield paradox, we get an up-close look at the full-grown abomination. As an escape capsule heads back to Earth, a welcome party is organized, and by welcome party I mean giant monster, and by organized I mean he sticks his head through the clouds. They're cumulus clouds too, so the monster is poking his head through cloud cover at around 1,000 meters above ground level. And the pod is landing over water, meaning that the monster is likely partially submerged too. The average depth of the ocean is a few kilometers deep, and we can't prove that the monster is standing anywhere particularly deep, but I'll let you draw your own conclusions there. We know that the baby is around 100 meters tall, and we know that the adult is poking its head through the clouds above the ocean, so you tell me how tall you think it really is. It definitely dwarfs anything else we've discussed so far. Sheesh.
Coming in at number 5, we have the Rake. The Rake is a creature believed to be a humanoid in appearance, with several references in folklore and horrific urban legends, originally appearing on the internet on creepypasta. It is said that the Rake attacks humans due to unknown reasons, and often causes its victims great psychological trauma. The first account of the Rake's existence was a mariner's log written in 1691, identifying the Rake by name. The next account, written in the 1800s, described the Rake as having hollow black eyes and being terrifying in nature. In 1964, a suicide note was written in which the author claimed to have committed suicide due to repeated encounters with the Rake, and the fear that the creature will torment him horribly. Currently, the most complete tale of the Rake was written in 2006. The story begins with a woman waking her husband up early in the morning. As she sits up to go to the restroom, she sees what seems to be a naked, pale man at the foot of the bed. Then, in fast motion, the Rake scurries to the husband's side of the bed and stares at him for a moment before running into the children's room. It fled, covered in blood, as the wife states, when the couple approached the room, leaving the mangled body of their daughter, whose last words were, "He is the Rake." Very creepy indeed. Coming in at number 4, the Goat Man. The Goat Man is a humanoid cryptid most commonly associated with Louisiana, Maryland, and Texas. It is often described as a 7-foot-tall hybrid creature, part man and part goat. Some claim it is a relative of the New Orleans evil chupacabra-like cryptid, the Grunch. The urban legend of them often tell of it killing young couples in parked cars, or scouring neighborhoods killing family pets. Throughout history, there have also been tales of them breaking into people's homes and assaulting its victims. Now, some say he was a man who kept goats and went mad after teenagers killed his flock, driven to seek revenge against any young adults. However, the most titillating version traces the origin of Goatman to the Beltsville Agricultural Research Center, a sprawling USDA facility anchored by a big brick building appointed with white columns. In this version, a mad scientist is conducting experiments on a goat when something goes horribly wrong, turning him into a half-man, half-goat beast thing, naturally hungry for blood. Now, the Goatman has many variations on the internet, with the most popular being the Pope-Lick monster. This is a legendary part man, part goat, and part sheep creature reported to live beneath a Norfolk Southern Railroad trestle over Floyd's Fork Creek in the Fishville area of Louisville, Kentucky. It is said to have powerful fur-covered goat legs, an alabaster skin face with an aquiline nose and wide-set eyes. short, sharp horns that protrude from the forehead, nestled in long, greasy hair that matches the color of the fur on its legs. Coming in at number 3, we have Jeff the Killer. Also known as Jeffrey Woods, but more commonly known as Jeff the Killer, this is the titular protagonist of the creepypasta story of the same name by the brother of Game Fuel TV, who loses his sanity and begins murdering to satisfy his homicidal urges. Now, the story of Jeff goes like this. Jeff started out as a normal suburban teenager, living with his mother, father, and brother. At some point in his life, when he reached the age of around 13, he and his family moved into a new neighborhood after his father got a promotion. Jeff and his brother were happy. However, not long after settling into the new area, Jeff obtained an odd feeling in his mind. Then one day, while waiting for the school bus with his brother, 3 kids approached them and mugged them at knife point, taking their wallets in the process. Jeff very quickly got the feeling in his head again and attacked the kids, incapacitating all 3 of them. To jump ahead in the story, which is incredibly long as you would expect, another fight occurs, leaving Jeff burned before he falls down the stairs of his house and passes out as the flames engulf him. He survives with his face being completely deformed. It is not long after that he goes on a serial killing rampage, killing those who refuse to sleep at night. If you haven't checked out this entire origin story, I suggest you do right after this video. Now, Jeff has extremely pale skin and burnt off eyelids, giving him an even more ghostly appearance. Later on in time, he got his most distinctive trait, the smile that he had carved into his own face. His clothing normally consists of a black pair of skinny jeans with a white hooded sweatshirt, sometimes stained with fresh and old blood from his victims. Coming in at number 2, we have the Smiling Man. Now, this terrifying story comes to us from the creepypasta wiki page of the Smiling Man. Now, it's a long one, so bear with me. I quote, "About 5 years ago, I lived downtown in a major city in the United States. I've always been a night person, so I'd often find myself bored after my roommate, who was decidedly not a night person, went to sleep. To pass the time, I used to go for long walks and spend time thinking. I spent 4 years like that, walking alone at night, and never once had a reason to feel afraid. I always used to joke with my roommate that even the drug dealers in the city were polite. But all of that changed in just a few minutes one evening. It was a Wednesday, something between 1 and 2 in the morning, and I was walking near a police-patrolled park quite a ways from my apartment. The park, as it was most nights, was completely empty. I turned down a short side street in order to loop back to my apartment when I first noticed him. At the far end of the street, on my side, was the silhouette of a man, dancing. It was a strange dance, similar to a waltz, but he finished each box with an off-forward stride. I guess you could say he was dance walking, heading straight for me. Deciding he was probably drunk, I stepped as close as I could to the road to give him the majority of the sidewalk to pass me by. The closer he got, the more I realized how gracefully he was moving. He was very tall and lanky and wearing an old suit. He danced closer still until I could make out his face. His eyes were open, wide and wild, head tilted back slightly looking off at the sky. His mouth was formed in a painfully wide cartoon of a smile. Between the eyes and the smile, I decided to cross the street. As I reached the other side, I glanced back and then stopped dead in my tracks. He had stopped dancing, was standing with one foot in the street. He was facing me but still looking skyward, smile still wide on his lips. The street ahead of me was completely empty. Still unnerved, I looked back to where he had been standing to find him gone. He had crossed the street and was now slightly crouched down. He started moving towards me again. He took giant, exaggerated, tiptoed steps, as if he were a cartoon character. When I finally found my voice, I blurted out the first thing that came to mind. "What?" After what felt like forever, he turned around and started dance walking away. I watched him go until he was far enough away to be almost out of sight. And then I realized something. He wasn't moving away anymore, nor was he dancing. He was coming back my way, and this time, he was running. I ran too. I ran until I was off the side road and back onto the main street. Looking back, he was nowhere to be found. Honestly, this story absolutely terrifies me, even still. There is also an incredibly creepy short film out there on YouTube about the Smiling Man that I highly suggest you check out. And finally, coming in at number 1, we have Siren Head. To quote the original caption of Siren Head, "She was on vacation with her husband and they were scoping out graveyards on the way, as you do, when she saw it. Rising out of the old cemetery, big as an old macabre telephone pole, was this some kind of bizarre art piece that authorities hadn't gotten wise to yet. Even as she stepped out of the car, the megaphones on its head screeched to life. 9, 18, 1, child, 17, remove, vile. A buzzing doubled voice screamed random words at her. At this point, it jerked into motion, striding down the hill towards her. Yikes. If that doesn't send chills down your spines, I don't know what will. Absolutely terrifying. Now, according to its fandom page, Siren Head is a hostile cryptid and urban legend created by Trevor Henderson. He is described as a tall, mysterious humanoid creature known for his odd appearance and the various sounds that echo out of his head. Now, as you would expect, the monster's head is a pair of sirens with mouths that he uses to kill any victim that is unfortunate to come across him. True to his name, Siren Head speakers can play various types of loud noises, typically air raid sirens, garbled music, conversations, or emergency broadcasts. Now, the first sighting of this monster reportedly occurred in 1966 when a family on vacation in the Arizona desert captured an image of Siren Head near 2 telephone poles. About 30 years later, on July 16, 1995, Chad and his friends were hiking in the woods of Tanyard Creek, where they found Siren Head to be lurking. According to Chad, his friends got snatched by something gigantic striding through the trees, which mimicked their voices. Chad was found alive with a few injuries, while all of his friends were gone, either taken or killed by the Siren Head. As of right now, there have been about 9 reports of Siren Head that have been noted by the victims of this monster.
Number 5, the Annihilation Bear. First up on our list is Annihilation Bear. We love the Annihilation Bear. Annihilation was a 2018 cosmic horror flick, and if it slipped through your watch list, and it probably did because this thing was a box office failure, regrettably, please pause this video, open up a new tab to Amazon Prime, rent it, and then come back to me in 115 minutes, okay? I'll wait. Okay, perfect. Welcome back. Pretty good, eh? Should have seen that one in a theater. And how about that one scene with the bear? Okay, for those of you who didn't watch, Annihilation is about a mysterious alien force called the Shimmer that has been expanding from a meteor crash into a remote area outside an army base. Everything affected by the Shimmer is mutating in bizarre, strangely beautiful fractal ways. Biological life merging together in ways it shouldn't, like a giant cosmic gumbo. A biology professor and an army veteran named Lena is sent to investigate after her thought-to-be-deceased husband shows up at home mysteriously and starts convulsing violently. She's then joined by a crew of scientists and researchers to explore the Shimmer and unearth its mysteries. Now, if you can remember all the way back to that first paragraph about 15 seconds ago, I mentioned a scene with a bear. In a movie with ridiculously star-studded cast and fantastic performances across the board, the movie is utterly stolen by one horrifying, cosmically monstrous mutant bear. There are no small parts, just small mutated bears. Like any good cosmic horror story, as the protagonists venture deeper into the Shimmer, they start to turn on each other. And one of the heroines ties the others to the chairs, where they're apprehended and hunted by this thing. A rotten, diseased mess of skin, and who knows how many different beings merged into this poor bear. They surmise that the creatures it's killed before have started to become grafted inside of it. We can see a human skull at the side of its head, and even inside the mouth, we can see another human set of teeth. The way this thing sounds, too, the mix of human screams and bear howls, is the kind of thing I'm still thinking about vividly 4 full years after seeing this. Annihilation Bear was barely even in the movie, and yet it sticks with me like a bad dream. Number 4, the Xenomorph. One of the most iconic horror movie monsters and a mainstay of pop culture iconography. When you think of an alien, if you don't think of a little gray man with big black peepers, it's very likely you think of the Nostromo's 8th passenger. Is it a little obvious of a choice to be on this list? Maybe. But I don't think I could sleep knowing that I didn't have the Xenomorph on the list. It just didn't feel right. Birthed by surrealist Swiss painter and all-around nightmare man, H.R. Giger. By the way, are there any of his paintings behind me right now? Are there any H.R. Giger paintings we can even show on YouTube? Anyway, the Xenomorph is the alien in the movies. Giger wanted an alien that looked vaguely human, but armored and protected from all outside forces. He wanted something with no eyes, so you wouldn't be able to tell if it was looking at you, instead having a human skull with empty sockets. If you want a little peek into Giger's mindset, in case his incredibly disconcerting paintings weren't enough, Giger himself had nothing but love for his baby, saying, "I wanted my alien to be a very beautiful thing. A monster isn't something disgusting. It can have a kind of beauty." And I guess he's right. You know, to each their own. There's definitely a real beauty in a constantly salivating, seemingly invincible, completely stone-cold killing machine with acidic blood, 2 sets of jaws, no drive beyond self-preservation, hunger, and procreation, and a penchant for stalking its prey remorselessly. I mean, that's exactly what it says I'm looking for in my Tinder bio. Number 3, the Bronco Fly. Jeff Goldblum is probably one of Hollywood's most celebrated and beloved weird guys. Everything he does is immediately lovable, and he has got such a friendly, inviting face. Known for fan favorites like Ian Malcolm in Jurassic Park, it would be just terrible if something ever happened to that warm smile. Well, rest easy, because the real Jeff Goldblum is doing very well for himself these days and nothing has happened to him. But in the 1986 David Cronenberg classic and one of my absolute favorite creature features, we get to see lovable old Jeff slowly molt into a sickening mix of fly, man, and a disgusting wet pile of makeup. Eccentric inventor Seth Brundle has seemingly perfected teleportation technology after working out a few kinks with its inability to read physical tissue. And after a night of poor scientific judgment and desperate to impress a girl, Brundle teleports himself, and it seems like it goes off without a hitch, except for the unnoticed housefly that enters the machine with them. From here, we watch Seth descend painfully slowly into a sloppy abomination. Brundle doesn't just step out of the machine already fly, no. We get to watch the poor guy's skin model, his face fall apart, watch his limbs start to bend the wrong ways until it all culminates with Brundle being reborn as a new species, the Bronco Fly, which looks less like a man or a fly and a lot more like a complete mess of carapace and wet hairy boils. Now the original Fly definitely has its moments, and I recommend you check it out. In that one, we watch a man swap his head and his arm for a fly's in a real classic 50s drive-in B-movie kind of way. And it's a ton of fun, Vincent Price is great in it, but it won't ruin your night the way looking at sweet Goldblum turning into the Bronco Fly will. But hey, they're both absolutely great, but I've got a real preference for the Cronenberg one. Number 2. Pinhead and the Cenobites. Angels to some, demons to others. That's what Pinhead describes himself and his group of Cenobites, which is referred to in the scientific community as a cenobium. You're welcome, you learned something today. Unless you're a fan of the films and you're already nodding your head in agreement, you might be asking yourself, what's a Cenobite? I have such sights to show you. The Cenobites are a group of extra-dimensional beings who exist beyond our understanding, traveling trans-dimensionally in search of further exploring the balance between pain and pleasure. They dress a bit like the goth kids in high school if they all fell through a home hardware. And special shout out goes to the right-hand man Chatterer, the eyeless, toothy-gritting best friend a pain demon could have. Mysterious and utterly disgusting, these seemingly humanoid travelers love nothing more than a good case of suffering. Their leader, Pinhead, gets the name from the hundreds upon hundreds of nails embedded into his skull, but he's not suffering at all. He really enjoys that kind of thing. He's just a friendly-looking guy looking to explore a bit. Can't shame him for that. I can probably shame him, however, for his sadism, treating the human body like plasticine and bending and flaying it further than it should ever go. Half the stuff Pinhead does in these films I could not even begin to describe to you if we are trying to stay friendly within guidelines. The lament configuration is a strange lockbox puzzle that when opened will summon the Cenobium to you. Whether or not they take you away to join them on their travels, well, that's not really up to you. That's up to Pinhead and his buddies. Number 1. Man. Number 1 on our list of the scariest monsters in horror movie, it's man. No, just kidding. It'd be funny though, let's do the real one. Number 1, The Thing. The ultimate in alien terror. That's what the poster for John Carpenter's absolutely legendary 1982 cult classic claims, and he was completely right. The Thing is a story about a group of researchers stationed at a complex in Antarctica who find themselves being preyed on by an intergalactic shapeshifter picking them off one by one, arousing suspicion amongst all these tight-knitted researchers. It was the Among Us of its time, if you will. The titular Thing in question is an extremely hostile, squelching, wet, shape-shifting alien from beyond the stars, capable of assimilating everything in its path, taking its form. We have no idea what the Thing itself even truly looks like, or if it could even be said to have a true form, as the film does sort of imply that it's a microbiotic organism. As in the film, a blood sample alone is enough to detect who the Thing is. When heated, the blood thickens and tries to escape away, suggesting that every cell of the Thing is sentient in some way. The Thing can take whatever form it pleases of its victims, replicating them perfectly, down to their memories, their speech, making it impossible to tell who's telling the truth and who's who they say they are. The Thing has no clear goals, serving only to preserve itself, and it will do anything to survive. Whenever it finds itself alone with a suitable target, it extends its vile tentacles, seizing its victim and becoming it. The Thing goes through several forms during the film, and each one of them are absolutely disgusting. Whenever a part of it severs, the Thing earns its number 1 spot on this list for its legendary practical effects from industry titan Stan Winston, whose series of puppets and maquettes gave us one of the most truly disgusting monsters to ever slop its way across the silver screen. The Thing is something like barbecuing and Bob Dylan. At some point you're gonna get a little older and realize your dad was right about some of the things he told you was good. Absolutely go see The Thing after this video if you haven't before. It will not disappoint you.